Growing up, I would get told, Kevin, you're a product of slavery, a lack of civil rights, and all this. And the teachers would say this to me, and I would go, yeah! And they'd go, no, it's supposed to make you feel bad. And I go, but it doesn't. Because what you're telling me is that even though blacks went through slavery and a lack of civil rights, we overcame it. I took it as a badge of honor. They wanted me to take it as a negative, and I couldn't see it that way. But when you ask me why did I start my charity, because I got tired of kids feeling that way.
Kevin Jackson is the executive director for the Kevin Jackson Network, as well as the founder of Black Sphere Alliance, a nonprofit organization based on education, but with the goal of making lasting impact in hard-to-reach communities. The Black Sphere Alliance is also a donor advice fund that gives money to many initiatives throughout the country, but in particular, initiatives that are focusing on adoption.
The reason why I'm interested in people is I think your story, I don't know what your story is, but I'm curious about it. I think there's a curiosity you should have about people. And once they see your curiosity, they let you in on what that is. And that to me is the spirit of life. You know, the thing that connects us all is finding that thing that we're passionate about. And that's what inspires me to do this charitable thing.
Today, let's sit down with Kevin and hear his own story and about why he's dedicated himself to charity. Let's dive right into today's American Game Changer. Kevin Jackson, welcome to the Epoch Times and American Game Changer.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about your story and how you got started into everything that you are currently involved in.
Yeah, so it's funny how life takes you to places that you don't know how you got there. But when you look back in retrospect, you go, wow. So I'll give you an example. My wife and I get about 100 kids adopted every year. And they're at-risk kids, and they get adopted as whole families. Now, when we started doing this, it wasn't intention to get, you know, when you think of adoption, you think I'll get this kid a family, that child a family. But we were doing sibling units, and it just turned into that. So we've gotten as many as 6 kids with one family, believe it or not.
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy. Well, as it turned out, my brother and I were adopted together.
That was going to be my question. Why did you get in?
I didn't realize that was what was happening. And what happened was, because my brother and I were very tight, we were 15 months apart, I couldn't even imagine not being with him. So when my mother passed away before I turned 5, my dad was in prison, San Quentin prison, we were adopted together. And I didn't have some passion to get kids adopted. But when I finally got the passion to do it, when somebody goes, we ought to do this, a friend of mine from church said, let's do this. So we did it. And what I figured, and we were figuring out why is everybody adopted as siblings? And then it hit me. I got adopted as a sibling, and I know how important that was to be able to have my brother with me, what it meant to have that. He was older. So, you know, that support system.
Do you hear stories of a lot of families being separated?
Oh, many of them are,
yeah.
and it's traumatic. You know, they.
I couldn't, yeah.
I mean, do you have brothers and sisters?
I do, and yeah, the idea of growing up would be
separately.
Like,
yeah. I mean, can you imagine what that camaraderie you had with family members, even when you fight, which me and my brother did a lot. We still couldn't imagine being without each other. So, but my point to it is that that's how life gravitates you, is you don't think you're going somewhere, but you end up in this circuitous way of getting to something that is deep inside of you. So when you ask me, you know, what is it we do charitably, every part of our charity is born of something inside of my DNA that was like, you got to do this. So for example, our educational charity. Growing up, I would get told, Kevin, you're a product of slavery, a lack of civil rights, and all this. And the teachers would say this to me, and I would go, yeah! And they'd go, no, it's supposed to make you feel bad. And I go, but it doesn't. Because what you're telling me is that even though blacks went through slavery and a lack of civil rights, we overcame it. I took it as a badge of honor. They wanted me to take it as a negative, and I couldn't see it that way. And so when I got older, I mean, that was me. I never thought about it at the time. But when you ask me why did I start my charity, because I got tired of kids feeling that way. I was like, Everything that I went through that was strife in my life, losing my mother before I turned 5, my father in prison, and every other bad thing that people perceive as bad, I looked at as a lesson to toughen me up. My mother dying at the age of 5, as tragic as that is, if you ask me, would you change it? No. Because what it did is it instilled in me a level of, I'm going to use a word that is not the right word, and I don't want the audience to feel this way, even though I am this way, but not in the way that they think. It instills in you a warrior attitude, a warrior mentality. And what you learn is you can overcome anything in your life if you can lose that sibling, that parental person that's supposed to be the most important person in a young man's life is his mom. And I lost her. And as much as it is a tragedy and I had to overcome a lot of other things, it made me so persistent and so resistant to things that impervious to other things that would be things like, you couldn't get me to do dope. There is nothing you could make me do because of me losing my mom. And had I not lost her, I don't know that I'd have that same attitude.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting is that when you look at this up and coming generation and a lot of, you see the mental health stuff going up, you see a lot of, why do you think that warrior spirit, you don't see it as much, I guess.
Right.
I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's anecdotal.
No,
I'm not sure,
you're very right.
What is your thoughts on that?
So, first of all, I don't think most people have been challenged enough. We've made it too easy. I've said many times, you don't, if you never miss a meal, you don't know hunger, right? If you've never not had a place to stay, you don't understand homelessness. You have to feel it at some point, even at a very basic level. Even a little kid that says, I'm going to run away, and he leaves the house, even if he leaves the house for 2 minutes, and the realization of, I got nowhere to go, hits him, that's a pretty powerful realization. Suddenly, you understand what mom and dad do, and you understand rules once you leave with your little bag. I did this. I left, man. I'm out of here. And I came back in about 10 minutes going, I got nowhere to go. Yeah. I see what they have. So we've made it too easy. And you learn from strife. I'm going to tell you, I hate to say this because we all strive for better, and whatever that is. Some people strive for monetary better, some people strive for spiritual growth, whatever it is. But whatever growth you're going to have, I'm going to tell you this. If you're going to grow, you better hit somewhere near rock bottom. Right. You have to have some form of strife to grow, or else it's not going to happen and it's not going to be genuine. Right.
Going back to the charities and your nonprofits, is there anyone that inspired you to get into the charity world that really, or is there anyone that's currently working with your charity that really inspired you to get into and to continue what you're doing?
So the cool thing about my charity, I started it in St. Louis, which is where I was from. And what I'm most proud of is the wealthiest people in St. Louis came to bat. The Bush family that own Anheuser-Busch, the people that own Enterprise Leasing, the people that own one of the minority owners of the St. Louis Cardinals, and others. It was all major corporations in St. Louis, and the reason why they did it was they knew me. They knew what I was about. I can't say I was inspired by anybody in particular for charity. I'm inspired to do philanthropic work because I believe everybody has a responsibility to give something back. And I don't mean that in the cheesy sense of let's give back. I mean, you have a responsibility to figure out what it is that you're good at and to be a beacon at it. And here's what I want to caveat that to say this. I truly believe what I'm about to tell you. I believe that in every human being, there is a genius, something inside them. I'm talking about from the dumbest dude on the planet to the smartest person. And it may not even be the thing that you see, that you think you see about them. And it is everybody. The reason why I'm interested in people is I think your story, I don't know what your story is, but I'm curious about it. I think there's a curiosity you should have about people. And once they see your curiosity, they let you in on what that is. And that to me is the spirit of life. The thing that connects us all is finding that thing that we're passionate about. And that's what inspires me to do this charitable thing.
How do you stay grounded to who you are and your mission with your charity?
Well, I would tell you, I understand people doing the former, which is wanting the pomp and circumstance and the big parties and what I call the cult of personality. I get it, because it's an elixir, man. It's dope. You know, I mean, I've been there. You know, you go somewhere and people know you and they're like, yo, man. You're like, hey, you know, I'm that dude, right? So I understand it. And I'm just in an age where I don't really care. I stopped trying to please people quite a long time ago. So that's the balance. But again, there is a balance. There's a part of me, and I'm going to say this to you, in our charitable work going forward, there will be a part of me that has to adapt to some of that. But I think the reason why donors do support what I do is they know I'm not getting lost in it. You know, I'm not going to be building multi-million-dollar homes in the hills and driving a new set of, you know, fancy cars, because I don't care about that stuff. What I care about is genuinely helping people and changing the attitudes that have become so pervasive that create this division that doesn't need to exist.
Just going back to that adoption, I want to go, what is your thoughts on the adoption process in the U.S. in general?
Yeah, so foster care is horrible. I mean, so I'll give you an example of a story. So we got 4 kids adopted to one family. The daughter was 13, it was 13, 11, 7, and 3 with the ages of the kids. The oldest child was a daughter. She had been sexually molested by the mother's boyfriend at the age of 12 and had a baby at 13. So we pulled the family out, have to get the kid, give the baby to another adoption agency that specializes in youngsters, because our average age of adoption is 12. So we take these kids, 4, one family, get this guy arrested, get rid of this crackhead mother, have to get, you know, get the children from her legally. So we get these kids placed in a single family. The family that adopted them had 4 kids, 2 of their own, 2 already adopted, and these 4 black kids. And they're a white family in central Missouri. So black people in Missouri, in St. Louis, were mad that we got these kids pulled out of this family and adopted with a white family. I just want to give you some idea of the politics of adoption. So this is these kids would have gone into, were already living with a crackhead mother whose boyfriend was molesting the daughter, would have been put into situations I don't even want to describe, because I can give you horror stories of what happens to these kids in foster care, because it's just a system, it's a meat grinder. So we get a family to adopt them, and we're fought tooth and nail to have this white family that says we'll bring them in. So the irony is, the family had adopted 2 other black kids, now there's 6, they're in central Missouri, and the joke when I was doing media was, they said, there's no black people who live in that county, and I go, well, the population in this family is gonna be, you know, I mean, they went from 2 black kids to 6 black kids. I mean, that's saying a whole lot. But I'm just giving you an idea of the craziness of the system. And so I asked the blacks that were complaining, okay, well, who of you are gonna step up and adopt all these kids together? Because they've already had enough trauma. You know, what, you gonna adopt them together, or you want to parse them out now into the system? The system stinks, is what it amounts to. And the problem with these kids is, these are the kids that get thrown into an education system that continues to beat them down. That says your parents were your forefathers were slaves. The system is against you because you're black, you're a woman, you're not LeBron James or whatever. And it's constantly beating you down to kids who've already been beaten down in levels that you or I will never know. And I'll be honest with you, I hate that I know it. I know these stories.
It's very tough. Very tough. Just imagining that is a hard thing to go through. I mean, it's just unimaginable in so many ways.
Tough stuff.
What do you hope to do for the future? How do you hope to grow and help and continue this fight?
So I want to change people's viewpoint. So you'll notice the thread in my charity work is, you look at kids being adopted. It's not political. I don't care whether the kid grows up to be a Republican or a Democrat or independent. I don't know what his parents were. All I know is a kid needs a forever family. I want that to happen. In in seeking educational excellence. I want a kid who wants to learn. And I want to find out what his genius is and what his passion is, because I know those two things exist in everybody. No matter how, if they have a heartbeat and any active brain, they have passion and they have something they're good at, and they're really good at it. I've seen blind kids play the piano like Mozart and never touched it. And you go, how does that happen? Well, that's somebody touched them.
Right.
And somebody found it out by accident or hook or crook. I've seen guys do a cityscape that to the degree of an engineer, just from one vision of it. I mean, how does a mind work to that degree?
Right.
So we have this untapped potential, this untapped genius, and these passion that exists in us, and everybody's squashing it, because what they do is we end up dividing each other over nonsense.
Wow. Well, appreciate you coming by. Thank you so much.
Man.